Welcome to the Ronnie Perez podcast, episode number 3 in our series From Daniel to Darius. This is part 3. Hi everyone, welcome to the Ronnie Perez podcast, episode number 3, part 3 in the series here, From Daniel to Darius, to finish off this series, then move on to some bigger and better things. But I want to thank you guys for being here for this journey, my first series, so thank you. Let's begin. So we're going to talk today about the Persian kings and this murdering group of people who have quite a crazy history here, which we're going to go over from the voice of Herodotus, who's one of our main writers at this time, the only guy writing at this time, and then commentaries and some of our other major famous historians. Let's begin. You might have known Nebuchadnezzar, right, from the podcast. But Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon, right? And he had an ally named Cyaxares. Cyaxares is a son who would inherit the Median Empire. Okay? He would also inherit the lands of the Scythians. Now, Astyages, which is actually how you say his name, Astyages would inherit these lands of the Median Empire. He would have a daughter. His daughter would be married off to Cambyses I of Persia, a small regional backwater. It's kind of like they aren't even that big. They're just a small little city. Cambyses I, the king of Persia then, small Persia, and then Mandana, the daughter of Astyages. Okay. Now, when Mandana and Cambyses I have a child, his name is Cyrus I, the king, right, who will be the conqueror of the Middle East, right? Who will be Cyrus the Great. But now he's just a little baby, right? A cute little baby, and kind of a crazy story develops. Quentin Tarantino meets like just disgusting murder. But here we go. Herodotus says, and again, it's Herodotus saying this, so take it as you will. He is saying that this story plays out that makes Cyrus seem just like this legendary mythic figure. And here goes. The son of Cambyses I, Cyrus, is born. Now, Astyages is scared this guy might be a real deal. Okay, it was prophesied that he might take over the whole world in some kind of prophecy, apparently. And now Astyages is scared for this guy, this baby who might take over his empire. So he has him brought to Ecbatana, where he will be killed. And he has his friend, okay, do the deed. His friend. Now, here's the thing. His friend can't do it, and he gives the kid off to a shepherd, okay, who is instructed by the king's friend, to leave Cyrus out in the elements to die, okay? Leave Cyrus to die. He can't do it, okay? The shepherd can't do it and brings the kid home, where his wife is giving birth to a stillborn. At this point, they take the stillborn to the mountain. They say he's Cyrus, and they keep Cyrus for themselves, raising this beautiful child. The story gets better. At this point, 10 years later, he's like a kid. He gets into a fight, Cyrus does, with this nobleman's son. They get into a bit of a scrap, and they're both brought up to the king, right? What kind of scrap was it? Because these two kids get brought to the king for a small little scrap. Okay, legend has it, they get to the king, and the king figures out that this kid is Cyrus. Okay, he sends Cyrus to his family to learn things. Okay, and then he has his friend, who he entrusted with the job, fooled. And this is how he fools him. This is sick. They have a giant dinner. Astyages brings his friend, who he entrusted to kill Cyrus. Doesn't happen, right? Now he feeds his friend this delicious meat the entire time. And the dude loves it. It's really good meat, seasoned well, blah, blah, blah. They're hanging out, they're having some drinks. Oh, look, the final course is here. They bring out the final dish. When they open the dish, it's Astyages' friend, who couldn't do the deed, right? His son, who Astyages killed and fed to his friend in retribution for not killing Cyrus. This is the kind of people we're dealing with in the ancient world, and why I'm happy to live in America, where these things don't happen. Nonetheless, many years later, Cyrus the Great, who we're going to call Cyrus the Great, but he's actually Cyrus the Second. Okay, Cyrus the Second, Cyrus the Great, Cyrus, we're just going to say Cyrus, in 559 becomes the king of Ansan, a small little backwater of the Persian Empire. Okay, now remember, the Persian Empire is still pretty small. All right, we have the Persian Empire really small, and we have the Assyrian, Babylonians really big, and they're kind of doing their thing. But guess what? Astyages, Cyrus's grandfather, orders an attack on Ansan at this point. And now, this attack on Ansan gets sent out by one of his generals, one of Astyages' generals, who legend says by Herodotus, or not, I keep saying legend, but the history says that he defected to join Cyrus. Cyrus was so great. He defected, joined Cyrus along with some of the nobility, and over the next 3 years, Cyrus, the generals, the nobility, the Persian army, which is still pretty small at this point, not as great as it's going to be, takes the Medians' capital, Ecbatana, and he marries Astyages, his daughter, and pardons Astyages. Now, he's smart. He's joining in by marriage to this country, and now this country is his country. Now he was already the king of Persia. Now he's the king of the of the Medes too. Okay, now he was king of the Medes, and he's the king of the Persians, joining them to become the Medo-Persian Empire, or his family line, the Achaemenid Persian Empire. That happens in 559. So just 10 years after he becomes king, he takes over the Medes. Okay, joining them to his cause. Now we come on to the Lydian Empire in Asia Minor. What was Cyrus's conquest there? Well, it's a guy named Croesus, right? He was the leader. He was a Greek leader of the Lydian area, okay? He unified local people against Cyrus. So he's kind of like, hey guys, there's an incoming threat. We need to unify. He unifies some of them. And the first battle was at Patera. This battle, we are told, is a draw, but results in him leaving and retreating back to his capital of Sardis. So Cyrus beats him at Patera, right? He retreats back to Sardis. At this point, Croesus does, and Croesus has his army come out to the plains to meet the Persian army. But here's a little bit of an antidote that Herodotus throws in here to kind of, along the way, you'll see that they throw some kind of sly stories of how this guy wins some battles. It's always like a thing, a small event always happens that ends up winning the battle. But in this case, at the capital, the Battle of Sardis, or off the side of Sardis in this field, Herodotus says that Cyrus lines camels up in front of his main force, right? Remember, in this kind of warfare, you have to drill your men, you have to set up formations, you have to envelop the enemy and flank and use your cavalry in different ways. So if you're heavy infantry in certain points, we forget that now because we're just used to shooting people. But back in the day, it was a giant ordeal to have this army. So they lined the armies up, and they put camels in the front, and they charged the camels. The hope is that this will rout the Lydian horsemen, because Lydian horsemen had never seen camels. They got scared. They'd never smelled the camel, never seen the camel. We don't know if this is true, but either way, the Lydian cavalry is routed, and Croesus is defeated and captured, taken back to the Persian capital. Now, this is how he conquers Lydian people. These are kind of Greek people. And this will leave echoes throughout the Greek Empire to follow. Conquers Lydian people, and now he's at Babylon, right? In the Battle of Opis, he takes Babylon, and Nabonidus says that this battle happened quickly and kind of in his histories. But also Herodotus says that, and you saw in episode 2 as well, when he kills who the Bible calls Belshazzar as Belshazzar, the king of that area. It's actually Nabonidus was actually the king. Belshazzar, was his son, but Nabonidus was taken. Okay, and Herodotus says that he routes a river into the city. Another anecdote says that he kind of snuck in, and the whole city was partying, and they had captured the capital part of the city, while the rest of the city didn't even know they were being captured yet. So that happens. Either way, Cyrus the Great takes Babylon, takes Nabonidus, and the Bible says that Belshazzar is killed. But Cyrus is growing in popularity. Cyrus is now taking the empire from Anson. At this point, he'd be known and be introducing himself as the King of Kings, King of the universe. He's introducing himself as these great grand terms, King of everything. And this is why he's taking this land. Now, Cyrus is later on described as being pleasing to the god Marduk, which is a Babylonian god, by taking out Nabonidus, who was seen impious, as he kind of paints him as impious. Now, the Persians have a fantastic propaganda machine at this point. They're kind of painting their enemies as these impious, bad people, and Cyrus is the liberator. Remember we talked about King Ashurbanipal, one of the Assyrian kings, and he kills the king that he had captured and hangs his head in front of his wife so that his wife has to see him. Remember the king that we talked about that killed the Jewish other Jewish kings' sons and took his eyes out. So the last thing he saw was this. The Assyrian and Babylonian people were not great people. They were not nice people. They were evil, evil, evil dudes. They'd build walls of dead bodies to detract the enemy. They'd have giant massacres, reliefs and carvings of this in the temples and in the palaces to tell people, hey, we're an aggressive force. They captured a lot of the areas. They were mean and destroyed a lot of Egypt. These dudes were rough dudes. And when Cyrus comes in, he's being benevolent. He's saying, hey, keep your government, just pay my taxes. He's saying, hey, no more of this harsh, hard, destructive, violent rule. By all accounts, Cyrus does do evil things, murderous things, by our standards. But there was nothing near the amount of death and destruction that the Assyrians and Babylonians did. So he's seen as liberator. We see this also in Isaiah. Isaiah says that Cyrus, my chosen, right? What's to say that some of this is not part of the Persian propaganda machine, kind of painting Cyrus as this liberator, this freedom maker, right? But after having conquered the area, he ruled 20 years from the king of Ansan, being called the king of Ansan, to being called the king of kings. 20 years he ruled and expanded Persia. Cyrus did. Till he reached his final battle. Now, there are some accounts that say that Cyrus died peacefully in his bed. Other accounts say that he was killed by some elephants somewhere in India. But the account that I like is the account from Herodotus, and if it's true, it's crazy. But he goes off to fight these Scythians near the Black Sea area. And he meets this Scythian queen named Tamaris of the Massagetae tribe. Now, the Massagetae are a tribe of Scythian horse people. They're steppe people. They're fighters, warriors, kind of this horse archer type people. And Tamaris is their queen. Tamaris, he actually offers to marry Tamaris and says, hey, marry me, join the empire, be great. She says no. They proceed to fight. Now, Cyrus leaves kind of a sly trick here. Again, Herodotus has this sly trick that he's kind of told that he does. And this sly trick is that he abandons a camp and then has that camp filled by some miracle with the best Persian wine ever. And then Tamaris' son, who's leading the charge, comes in with his horses. They see this camp abandoned. They kill a couple of dudes, and they find themselves in the camp. They loot it, and what do they find? This crazy, awesome wine. Now they drink this wine and become drunk, and now he's captured by Cyrus. When he comes to, he kills himself. Tamaris' son does. And now Tamaris is angry. She fights Cyrus, kills Cyrus, cuts off his head, and puts his head in a sack of wine and keeps it as decoration. This is the kind of brutality that we're seeing in these earlier times. But nonetheless, Cyrus is dead. Cyrus the Conqueror, Cyrus the Great, the guy who would liberate the people from the harsh Babylonian rule, who would make the Persian Empire. Fantastic guy. Again, I'm being quick. There's so much more I can talk about, but I've only got 30 minutes, so here we go. Now, he leaves his empire to a guy named Cambyses II, who would rule in 530. Now, Cambyses II, also a pretty crazy story to him. He has a brother named Bardia. We're gonna hear more about Bardia soon, but Bardia has this kind of a small kingdom that he's also ruling, kind of a consolation prize, because you're not the king, but I mean you can kind of rule this little small place. But Cambyses II does some crazy stuff. Here's a map, by the way, to show you where we're at. Cambyses' conquest would take him down west to the Mediterranean Sea, where the River Nile is at, where the city of Memphis is at there. That's actually part of Egypt. And where that says Libya, that's going to be where his conquest will take him to Africa. This map kind of shows where Cambyses is at and what the height here, or what would be kind of the height of the area of uh, of the Persian Empire. Now, Cambyses does what his father couldn't do. He actually conquers Egypt, and this is where the beginning of his troubles start, because he only ruled for about 7 years, right? So he dies in 523, so he only ruled a couple years. He goes to Egypt, fights in Egypt, conquers Egypt. He brings his brother Bardia along with him, apparently, and at this point, Herodotus says that this Ethiopian king, or this African king, gives Cambyses this bow, and Cambyses tries to pull it, but he can't. But his brother Bardia is a beast. He's pulling that bow, and he's a beast. Cambyses is kind of jealous of him, sends him back to the capital. But he also tells one of his friends to kill Bardia because he doesn't want any problems. Now, the only person who knows this is a general named Darius. Darius is the only person Cambyses told that he sent his brother off to die by an assassin. We're going to know why that's a coincidence here shortly. But overall, Cambyses is a pretty bad leader. People are said to have hated him. He isn't like his father at all. He actually is said, this is the legend, it's been kind of disproven a little bit, but Herodotus says that Cambyses killed the Egyptian bull, Apis. Now, their Apis bull is kind of their incarnation of their god Apis, who's one of their gods. Now, Apis his form is a bull. Now, apparently, Cambyses doesn't care and just straight kills him in front of all the Egyptians. So it's like killing their god for fun. Okay, at this point he does that. The Persians say that he's a drunk, that he's kind of not the greatest guy around. The Egyptians hate him, he killed their god. And now Bardia was supposedly killed. Now either Bardia or an imposter claiming to be Bardia, we don't know, this is lost to history. Darius would later say he was an imposter, a magician, those darn magicians, who would impersonate Bardia. Because again, remember, only Darius knows that Bardia is actually dead, right? So he pretty much, on his way to put down this insurrection by Bardia, he suffers a wound to his leg and he dies. So the wound is self-inflicted. He kind of cuts his leg on a sword or something, they say, and he got infected and he dies. Now, think if you're Darius, okay? You're off to fight the usurper, who you've got plans for, and the king is in the way, so you kill Cambyses and then go fight the usurper. Where does that leave you, the hero of the Persian Empire? There's kind of a murder mystery type deal here going on, to where we don't really know what all the facts are. When you know that the only person that knows that Bardia is dead is Darius, and now magically Cambyses is out of the way, so Darius and 7 dudes, this is like the Magnificent 7, this is like SEAL Team 6. Darius and 7 dudes go to where Bardia is at, and they kill him. And the 7 dudes make Darius king. So now, somehow, Darius has gotten rid of accidental death of Cambyses, painted this Bardia as an imposter magician after the fact, and killed him, and now he is seen as being in charge of the Persian Empire. I don't know if it played out that way. This is just my opinion from reading and kind of some other opinions that I've heard. I'm only relaying some ideas here. I'm not a historian. I'm just a guy trying to talk about history. But this seems kind of crazy. But Darius, he is seen as being one of the great leaders of the Persian Empire because he expands them to the peak. He's also one of the great guys of infrastructure that builds roads and bridges and all this stuff, able to build the infrastructure of Persia up. By the way, a quick little segue or fun fact here. If Daniel was in his 20s, okay, in 597 BCE at the fall of Judah, that's when he's captured, right? And he was a young man, he was captured by Nebuchadnezzar. And he says that Darius threw him in the lion's den, right? That would have been in 522 BC. It's 75 years later. Which means that when Daniel's in the lion's den, if he was in his 20s, would have been 90-ish when he got thrown into the lion's den, according to the Bible. So, fun fact there. Now, we start off here with Darius. Darius being one of the greatest kings of the Persian Achaemenid Empire. And Darius does some pretty crazy, awesome stuff. The main things that he does here is that he ends up bringing Persia into the forefront as far as commerce, as far as infrastructure, as far as all these things that you need to have a legitimate fighting force. And he would be kind of the solidifier of the Persian Empire. After this, his son Xerxes would ruin it. He'd be the first guy to, I can't say ruin it, but he'd be the first king to kind of witness the decline of the Persian Empire as far as land goes. But Darius is interesting because he ends up marrying the daughter of Cambyses, making his son Xerxes kind of the great grandson of Cyrus the Great, Cyrus the Conqueror. So they kind of bring legitimacy to his kind of dynasty. But he would go and he'd kill the Bardia guy, he'd become the king of Persia, and he'd move on to greater things. But his entire life, I feel like he'd be kind of like trying to be the guy to fit in. He'd be the guy that kind of, he doesn't belong, but he kind of belongs, and he's trying to kind of fit in there. But Darius would be seen as economic and mercantile. Now, that's kind of a good thing for us, like he's industrious, cool, he's a CEO. But to be honest, it doesn't play that way. He ends up being called mercantile because the Persians kind of saw mercantilism was beneath them. To a Persian noble, buying things and being kind of sneaky with money was kind of like an insult to Persian honor. So when they call him mercantile, they kind of call him like a penny pincher, like an economic person. And that's kind of like not seen as a great thing in the Persian mindset. But he does. He ends up putting a lot of infrastructure and building Persia to what it would be at the peak of its empire. Now, he would also begin what's called the Greco-Persian Wars. And Greco-Persian Wars would begin with kind of the Battle of Marathon, which in 490 happens and is a major loss for the Persians. It kind of brings them to kind of the first fight in this battle, the war. You see it in 300 Rise of an Empire. It's the opening scene, and it's described by Herodotus as being one of the craziest battles because it's the Athenian army kind of anticipating the disembarkation of the Persian troops. They disembark, and now the Athenian army, who, by the way, is a heavy infantry army. They have what's called hoplites, and these Greek hoplites are heavy armored infantry with spears and shields. They had a short sword, but mostly spears and shields, and they'd make a phalanx where they'd all line up, right? Like I'm like a Spartan, 300. They have this phalanx, and they'd have the spears, and they just charge, right? And they walk up slowly, and they attack. There would be 3 files, 1, 2, and 3, and they'd bring the spears down, and they'd kind of fight that way. Now, in this Battle of Marathon, Herodotus says they charged the Persians at full speed. So imagine these giant hoplites. By the way, in all honesty, it probably didn't happen. It wasn't part of their battle tactics to charge at full speed with all their armor and the weapons, right? But Herodotus says they charged at full speed. Might have been a breaking convention, maybe. But they charged at full speed and capture the Persians by surprise. The Persian soldier is wearing wooden wicker armor with a wooden wicker shield, and there were a lot of archers in this army, and they had a short sword. Now, they tried to charge quickly, I believe, to avoid being hit by the arrows because they didn't have time to actually form rank and file and shoot the arrows out. So they charge at full speed, catch the Persians as they disembark, and force them into a full retreat. This would be the first battle that Darius loses. In the movie 300 Rise of an Empire, he seemed to have been there. He wasn't. He actually sent his commander across. The commander actually lost that battle. His plans would then be to lead it personally the next time. Over the course of the next couple of years, he's building this giant Persian war machine to come across and defeat the Greeks. Unfortunately, problems in Egypt in 486 would cause him to have some issues. He had to go to Egypt to quell the insurrection in Egypt. As it happens when you have such a giant empire, you have to go different places to do different things. But he has to go to Egypt, and while he does that, he dies from health-related issues, in all honesty. And he ends up leaving Xerxes in charge. Now, Xerxes would inherit this giant Persian war machine and use him against the Greeks. and he would begin kind of the decline of the Persian Empire as far as land goes. But Darius, being a great leader, being a great infrastructure builder, solidifies the Persian Empire and hands this down to Cyrus. Now, I'm going to stop there because I have a whole other series I'm going to be doing on the Greek and Persian wars. This one's on the Persian king, so we'll kind of stop here. Again, there's so much more to this story, but doing it very brief is kind of difficult, but hopefully you guys got some good information and you enjoyed this series from Daniel to Darius, the Assyrian, Babylonian, Persian kings, from what the Bible says, what our famous sources say. Thank you so much for joining me on this. I really appreciate it. Like and subscribe to this page. Good things coming soon. We're going to be doing a new series coming up next month. Be out on the lookout for that. Thanks, guys. Again, I appreciate it. Have a great day. That's it for part 3 of From Daniel to Darius, the Ronnie Perez podcast, episode 3, the final part of the series. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you next month. Be sure to find us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, subscribe for more updates. Thanks.